Hi everyone, and welcome to Nouvelle-Aquitaine Tech Bridge, the first episode featuring Nicole Manger. The topic of today will be competing with giants, what European AI builders need to win. Today's webinar is a collective initiative supported by all 6 French tech communities across Nouvelle-Aquitaine, our capital French Tech Bordeaux, and all of the 5 local communities alongside French Tech Pays Basque, French Tech Limousin, French Tech Périgord, French Tech Pau-Béarn, and French Tech Poitou-Charentes. Before we begin today's conversation and in regards to the current landscape, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the devastating wildfires currently affecting our region, particularly around Bordeaux. Our thoughts are first and foremost with everyone whose lives have been turned upside down by these fires. As of yesterday morning, more than 42,000 hectares have burned in Gironde alone. Over 220,000 people have been evacuated, and 84 firefighters have been injured while protecting lives and communities. In some areas, flames have reportedly reached heights of 25 to 30 meters, illustrating the extraordinary intensity of these fires. And at the same time, as you know, and as you might read, dozens of other major wildfires continue to burn across France, while around 50 active wildfires are currently being fought in Spain. So obviously, we stand in solidarity with the families who have lost their homes, with those who have been evacuated, and with all of the local communities facing these unprecedented events. We also want to express our deepest gratitude to the firefighters, emergency responders, and volunteers who have been working day and night under extremely difficult conditions to protect lives and communities. As you know, some have been injured and some have made the ultimate sacrifice in the line of duty, so we owe them our respect and our gratitude. I therefore would like to invite everyone joining us today to observe a brief moment of silence in their honor and in support of everyone affected. Over the past few years, as you know, Europe has experienced increasingly frequent and intense heat waves. Scientific evidence shows that climate change, driven largely by human activities, is increasingly the likelihood and severity of these extreme weather events, which in turn create conditions for larger and more destructive wildfires. Moments like this remind us that technology cannot be developed in isolation from society. Artificial intelligence and emerging technologies at large have extraordinary potential to help us better understand climate risks, improve disaster prediction, strengthen emergency response, and accelerate scientific research. At La French Tech Bordeaux, they were communicating this morning about recent facts. We are already seeing this in practice. Companies such as French Shark Robotics are currently deploying AI-enabled robots to assist firefighters and protect critical industrial infrastructure during increasingly severe wildfires, demonstrating in concrete how AI can help keep first responders out of harm's way while strengthening our resilience to climate-related disasters. At the same time, as you know, AI also raises important questions around energy consumption, water use, environmental impact, governance, and responsibility. And while those conversations are not so new anymore, this is precisely why conversations about AI ethics, governance, and responsible innovation are not theoretical discussion reserved for policymakers. They are conversations about the kind of future we want to build at the end of the day. How do we innovate responsibly? How do we ensure technology serves both competitiveness and the public interest? And how can Europe, in this context, lead by demonstrating that innovation, trust, and sustainability are mutually reinforcing rather than opposing objectives? These are some of the questions that inspired Nouvelle-Aquitaine Tech Bridge. So welcome everyone to this very first episode. And Nouvelle-Aquitaine Tech Bridge was created with one ambition: to connect our regional ecosystem with some of the world's leading experts shaping the future of technology. Our objective is simple: helping startups, AI builders, investors, public and private decision makers better understand the global trends that will define tomorrow's competitiveness. Today's conversation is inspired by one of the most important publications released this year: Enhancing Competitiveness, Sovereignty and Security of the European Union in Frontier AI, a report that was published on July 15, 2026 by the European AI Office. We will add the link to the report in comments just after the live. In a nutshell, the report summarizes discussions from the first European Expert Forum on Frontier AI, which brought together more than 100 experts from across Europe's AI ecosystem, including frontier AI developers, investors, industrial leaders, technical researchers, academia, think tanks, representatives from member states, and the European Commission. The discussions were conducted under the Chatham House rule, making this one of the most candid assessments of Europe's AI future to date. One sentence out of these reports particularly stood out to me: the next 1 to 2 years could be decisive for Europe to move into a position of strength. So today, rather than discussing AI in general, I'd like us to explore a much bigger question. Can Europe still become a global AI leader? And if so, what needs to happen now? To help us answer that question, I am extremely delighted to welcome someone who has spent years at the intersection of AI policy, AI adoption, international governance, and European competitiveness in the private and public sector. Nicole Manger, thank you for being with us today. Before we get started, and thank you for taking the time to be with us, can you please share more about your background and introduce yourself to our audience?
Sure. Thank you so much, Marianne. And first of all, very warm wishes, best wishes from Germany also to the French communities being affected by the wildfires. I really pray and hope, that the authorities will get this under control soon. Okay, so to get started with our topic today, I guess I just say a few words about my background, where I'm coming from, what I'm doing, and also what my motivation is to work in this sector and in this field. So I've worked for the past 10 years, really at the intersection of technology, diplomacy, and geopolitics over in the US and here in Europe. And, for over 5 years with the Foreign Ministry of Germany. So that was in the past years, most recently, and really across all domains, all topics of AI policy, cybersecurity, but also data governance and very practical questions of AI adoption in the public sector. So I joined the ministry actually in a very hands-on data-driven unit called Preview. So this was really where we experimented and used AI tools and big data analytics to basically help crisis prevention, to help proactive humanitarian assistance and climate action. And I built the global partnerships there, like with the scientific community, the entrepreneurs, the startups, but also civil society. And then, like, once we had ChatGPT and generative AI coming up, we realized we need to bundle our competencies in a centralized AI policy unit. I built this AI policy unit then. So really in the past 3 to 4 years, worked very closely with the digital and cyber ambassador on the big framework, policy regulation like the EU AI Act and the negotiations for the Global Digital Compact at the UN level, but also the Council of Europe Convention on AI and Human Rights. So really, bridged from the practical adoption questions to the bigger, more abstract policy questions. And currently, I guess, I'm working with UNESCO on their expert networks because what intrigues me currently is more the question, like, how can we actually get those abstract AI ethics and policy principles into practice? into everyday operations and business, and also the public sector. So we really work on like how to operationalize the AI ethics recommendations of UNESCO, but I also work in the G7 and G20 context on questions of digital sovereignty, building middle power coalitions, and digital public infrastructure. Maybe just a word, Marianne, before we go on my core motivation. I guess it really started in California. I studied for a while at UC Berkeley over in San Francisco, and I took I visited some courses of Stuart Russell. He's like one of the big AI safety pioneers. And at the time, this is a long time ago, he already warned about the exponential existential risks of frontier AI. So I got this narrative, but at the same time, you were so close to Silicon Valley and you saw this firsthand, like this mentality, we break things to make things. And I was also inspired, by the excitement and the innovation spirit. And my motivation really is to bring these two things together, like to have this excitement about innovation, about technology, but integrated with democratic values, with human rights, and with transparency and trustworthiness. So I guess that's my core motivation. And I'm so thankful to be joining you all today.
Thank you so much, Nicole. And I'm so delighted to be able to introduce you to our ecosystem. We actually met when you took the time to engage with us in my past research work, which was towards how to actually turn AI risk into sustainable performance. And yes, one of the key questions, and you framed it very well, is how do we operationalize those abstract concepts into daily operations for businesses? So let me then move into the part one of this conversation that is definitely going to be around, is Europe asking currently the right question? And what I mean by that is, so to refer to the sentence I already mentioned in the introduction that really stood out from the report for me, the one that says that the next 1 or 2 years could determine Europe's position in frontier AI for the next decade. And I think that's a question that is kind of asked across different ecosystems, different networks as well. So Nicole, in your perspective and from your very strong background and expertise, do you agree to this on a high level? Before we get into details, like, do you think Europe still has more time than we sometimes believe?
I guess I agree with the EU Commission's report that time is we are basically running out of time, right? And there are a couple of big picture developments that we see that function like a catalyst for this. So one is obviously the geopolitical context, right? And we will talk about more about digital sovereignty more later on as we go through this conversation. But we really see that AI is becoming power infrastructure. Dominance over AI is leveraged as a tool for political, economic, military power. And so there is a really strong growing demand for sovereign AI solutions. And so Europe cannot wait here, because eventually our strategic autonomy will depend on it. The way we live will depend on our capacity to develop those sovereign AI and AI solutions and infrastructure. The second really is the pace and the disruptive nature of AI development that we see globally. And the AI safety discussions we also see at the UN level. And if Europe wants to be at the forefront shaping the values and the standards for advanced frontier AI systems, I guess we also have to level up on our tech capabilities, right? And the third, reason why I really believe we are running out of time is, and Sam Altman actually said that, he said, actually, the biggest value in the future is not coming from developing foundational models anymore. It's coming from industry and business integration. And that's actually, where I see Europe having a huge strength. We have, we are at the forefront in industry, be it healthcare or energy, manufacturing, right? And the data that we have are so valuable. So I think we cannot afford to lose this momentum, this chance that we have right now to become a leader in industry AI and business AI.
Yeah, it makes sense. I guess this is also very much related to not solely envisioning innovation per se, but ensuring that there is an actual product market fit and that we actually answer to an issue, to a problem, that we offer a solution. Yeah. Okay. So when people hear the AI race, usually they immediately think about companies such as SpaceX, OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, NVIDIA, the dynamics and the AI race between China and United States. But I wonder whether we're measuring success using the wrong criteria. In your opinion, Nicole, should Europe really try to copy Silicon Valley, or should Europe define success differently?
Yeah, I guess that's like the biggest, conversation that we are all having here on the policy side, especially. I guess like most of the time when you listen to the public debates, like we define, AI power or being a pioneer, dominance in terms of like who has the largest model, who is most capable, performant in its model, like who has the biggest investments, who has the biggest data center, the highest market valuation, right? And so those are very American criteria or metrics to measure success and dominance in AI. But I guess because we have this geopolitical context, the question is becoming more like not who has the most performant AI model at the time, but really the model that users and customers, the public basically is willing to use, to adopt, where the trust is highest. And also the models that are most secure, that keep our data secure. And that's where I really feel like Europe has a strong advantage, a lot of strengths, basically. And that's, I guess, like, those questions, like, values, standards, trustworthiness, transparency, openness, like if we take those as metrics, Europe can actually be, defining its own role as one of the AI pioneers with its own brand for trustworthy AI. And I feel like, a lot of the conversation is about like regulation versus innovation and how bad the EU AI Act is. But in my concept, actually, the EU AI Act laid the foundation for this brand or for this business model of trustworthy AI. The only issue that we have now is that we stopped at regulation. But in fact, like we have to now have a really strategic conversation. How can we turn those values into reality by helping businesses and entrepreneurs strategically to make better competitive products with these European values? So I guess like that's my answer to your question, but it's a very current policy discussion we see in Paris and Brussels and also in Berlin here.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. Actually, to jump back on what you've just said, there is, in the area, a very great report, and I haven't seen a better one in 2026 being released. It's called the ROI of Ethics by the Digital Economist, that was published in June 2025, where they've been basically analyzing a big volume of businesses developing AI as the core strategy of the businesses. And the report basically shows that companies implementing AI ethics as the core foundation of the business strategy are able to improve productivity by 20%, reduce the legal disputes by 35%, which leads automatically into reduce compliance cost of 40%. So yeah, again, that also resonates with what Sam Barrett always says, a responsible AI leader from Australia, that at the end of the day, 80% of AI projects fail, often due to avoidable issues like biased data, structural gaps, lack of legal frameworks, like at the end of the day that the European AI Act aim to correct. But yeah, there is definitely like
exactly. No, exactly. I guess you are mentioning like a really important point, So in the beginning, the EU AI Act was really there to step into this governance gap that we saw. Like even until now, we have no binding global framework, right? And the EU said like we act proactively and we want to have this legal certainty. And the idea was, once we have this legal certainty, we will make it easier for the AI developers to innovate. Just that, like in the end, the rules got so complex and the reporting burden got so high that we negatively impacted, especially the SMEs that we actually wanted to help.
Yeah.
But absolutely important point.
Yeah, it's true. Um, the reports of the EU AI office also argues something quite provocative that I wanted to mention here. It says that Europe shouldn't confuse sovereignty with self-sufficiency. Instead, Europe's objective should be to ensure it can always access, choose, control, and benefit from frontier AI, regardless of where those models are developed. In your opinion, has Europe been framing the sovereignty debate the wrong way?
Yeah, I guess like it's again like it's such a current debate, and again like sovereignty. You know, basically you open a newspaper or you watch a news channel, you will hear the word sovereignty, right? But oftentimes like we don't really like, you know, different people, different stakeholders have different conceptions of what it actually means. So let's maybe unpack it a little bit and break it down and try to operationalize it, because I think it's really important for AI developers actually. So I guess, you know, my biggest point here is that oftentimes when I talk to startups or to industry or businesses in general, there is this big conception that this is an abstract political debate that happens in European capitals. But in fact, like this is a very practical, issue and challenge, and it's going to affect every business, every startup, every company in their everyday operations. Again, let's step back to the geopolitical context, what I mentioned earlier, right? We see that AI and digital technologies more broadly are becoming power infrastructure. So just look at what happened with Anthropic's new model a couple of weeks ago. So you suddenly had the US administration cutting foreign access to the most advanced AI models. So, you know, for political pressure or for national security reasons. Or what we also saw when the US and the EU Commission were negotiating the trade deal, you know, and at the same time, there were some fines by the European Commission against big tech, big American tech. There was basically this argument brought forward by the US administration that, you know, they leveraged the digital power to get some advantages in the trade deal, right? Yeah. So we see that really tech is becoming not only tech, but really power infrastructure in military terms, in economic terms, and in political terms. Now, what does that mean? Like a company, you know, that is relying on software, you know, and hyperscaler platforms completely without a protective environment, might just be completely dependent in their everyday operations. So what I'm seeing actually is that there's a really big growing demand in Europe for sovereign AI solutions, but also for sovereign digital solutions more broadly, right? So that's the first. I think it's good news for AI developers here in Europe, because there is a whole market emerging for sovereign solutions. The second misconception that I often see is basically, the term sovereignty. So oftentimes and you mentioned this, in your introduction, I guess. Oftentimes we think of sovereignty as complete isolation. And I would argue that's not sovereignty. Sovereignty is strategic autonomy, like to remain, being able to act and reduce dependencies, to diversify partnerships, but not to be, on an isolated island. And it brings me to this question of how to operationalize sovereignty, right? So actually you can break it down into data sovereignty. So, where's the data processed, stored, collected? How do we make sure that data cannot just cross borders without us knowing? The second is technical sovereignty, so the actual architecture behind. The third being operational sovereignty. So how do we make sure that only national or let's say European citizens that have clearance get access to maintain, and use these technical architectures and the systems themselves. And the fourth really being legal sovereignty. So making sure that, once we have an escalation pathway, the whole issue stays in our European jurisdictions. But the most important point I would argue is that if you have 100% sovereignty in every of those 4 pillars, you would have complete, a safe, secure, protected environment. But my point is, like, we don't need 100% sovereignty for every use case, right?
Yes.
So we have to have like a more strategic debate, like about what the use case is, and then how to operationalize sovereignty in a pragmatic way, not in an ideological way.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you. And I think actually what we've seen happening recently in the AI community with some of the latest Anthropic models being actually, how to say, not allowed to everyone, but only reserved for some federal American agencies and so on, poses those debates around security, national safety. And I mean, why basically I understand that there is a global framework to kind of like stick to, then you can iterate on different aspects and a part of it as per the actual business applications you're operating. But I think that's what we also want to avoid seeing in the long run is having 2 different economies being developed at 2 different levels. Let's say like a part of the world having access to the top-notch technologies, the latest innovations, right? Different parts of the world. And obviously, I'm thinking of the South regions, for example, not
Right.
having access to those technologies. And then so, we'd end up having some areas in the world passively being affected by technology instead of having an active role into conversations, into the way innovation is being developed, deployed, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And like one thing that just comes to mind also is, and I mentioned this, like I think we need pragmatic solutions, not ideological solutions. So at the moment, if you want to have access to the most performant AI model, obviously, those are the models in the US, right? Like OpenAI and Anthropic and others. But so that brings me, actually, it would be smart to have like a dual track strategy, right? Like once that is the reality, that the most powerful models are those, in the US, like why not think about ways to, have access to those, use them, but in a protected cloud environment, where we make sure that the data is protected and that, we adhere to the GDPR rules. And that basically the jurisdiction remains also in the European Union, the data centers, the physical infrastructure. But at the same time, invest in the mid and long term into like European AI companies, startups to build our own models, invest in a strong open source ecosystem, because that will help us eventually to lay the foundation to innovate even faster and more transparently. So I guess like my wish would be, that we are in a situation already today that we can use our European sovereign AI models and, support our companies. But I guess the realistic, pragmatic stance is that this is not the reality. So I think we have to have like a more strategic discussion, like how we can find pragmatic solutions to have access to the best models, but in a protected way. And at the same time, really invest, in our European ecosystem and market and create the frameworks for European companies and startups to be successful.
Yeah. That's like a kind of like a nice closing word on that part one of that conversation. And you kind of already answered the upcoming question, which was around the fact that, as the report says, and very much aligned with what you've already said, Europe already has world-class researchers, outstanding universities, and exceptional industrial assets. So yeah, in the end, we need to stop underestimating systematically our own strength, but more like, I guess, defining a clearer direction on where the effort needs to be invested into. So yeah.
I guess, it relates a little bit back to my point earlier that I see like, we have this comparative advantage when it comes to industrial AI, having this really valuable industrial and business data across, like Germany is strong on this, but France as well, and across Europe, right?
Yeah.
And how can we like how can we better leverage these data to tailor AI models to specific domain challenges and tasks, right? Like I feel like this is like a big market that is emerging where we can create a lot of value and have a big share in the AI market in the future. And you also mentioned research, right? I think like Europe, especially for Germany, you know, I'm a fellow at the Technical University of Munich as well. And I like to bring them as an example because usually we have excellent foundational research, but then we have a commercialization problem because, you know, students who have excellent ideas and solutions, it's just very difficult for them to create a spin-out company, found their startup, and then get access to growth capital. So in Munich, they have created this Unternehmertum. It's like basically an innovation hub, an accelerator that helps, you know, bring this theoretical research into the market by helping, you know, students to found their companies and then getting access to seed funding, but also to growth capital. And I feel like these models are so important, you know, connecting research to the market.
For sure. Well, that's actually one of the mission of La French Tech, of all of the capital and communities across the world. We are 125 communities implemented in France and abroad, making the bridge effective in between the research and then the industrial aspect is very key, basically, to the success of creating French and European champions. So that's why, for example, to take one example, in our ecosystem at La French Tech Pays Basque, we are very proud to have Floaty, an emerging business that we were able to emphasize since last December during one of our major events called Mon Innovation, Mon Territoire, so my innovation, my territory in English. The business model is actually supported by Ines Deportes. She's a fellow at the local university here, and she's currently developing Floaty. So it's a microscope that is at a human size. And thanks to a camera and artificial intelligence, it can actually detect nanoparticles into the fluids. So it's obviously, a tool that could help in treating waters, solving potential health issues when it comes to the, fast fashion industry, for example, or, the water we're drinking on a daily life. I mean, it could be so many business applications from this type of innovation. And obviously, one of the key questions that comes first is how do I scale? Like, I mean, before even scaling, like how do I go on the market? How do I verify my product market fit? How do I get testers, user testers, etc.? So what we try to do, and we have different actually programs at La French Tech nationally that are then duplicated into every single communities, is first to put in contact those innovators, startups with public and private procurements. So we ensure basically that by reuniting them together, and that the program is called Je choisis la French Tech, I choose La French Tech, then we can ensure that eventually the biggest part of our public or private investment actually goes and benefits to the French companies. In French, the public comments represents 170 billion euros, but only 2% of this goes into the French companies for now. So I think there is a mindset as well, a shift in mindset that is needed. And this is kind of like a cultural issue. And that's exactly what the director of La French Tech, Julie Huguet, has been talking about when we were all reunited together in Paris the day before Vivatech started on June 16th. So yeah. And another thing as well, just to jump back on what you're saying, I think that in Europe, because we have so many rules, AI laws to comply to, that are definitely not easy to operationalize with the markets, but they request us to go on the opposite direction of what the Silicon Valley does. We can't just kick off new product features on the market, see what happens, and then retroactively, when there is AI risks, AI harms being observed, then think like, okay, I'm going to amend the models, etc. First, this is time consuming. It's very costly. In Europe, we're asking basically entrepreneurs to anticipate AI risks, to better basically define the next step of a business strategy that is aligned with governance. So I think on the long run, that can give us a very strong advantage, as you said. Trust is needed for technologies to be adopted and for people to allow their businesses to share data. So Yeah, I mean, while the context is definitely challenging, and I think it's hard to remain optimistic, I still believe that, you know, we can definitely, yeah, change the narrative in the right direction. All right. Well, that actually leads us to the second part of the conversation. So yeah. As we were just saying, Europe is often portrayed as the continent of regulation, not to say the one that is followed like the gold standards. But reading this report, the report from the EU AI office, I had the impression that the conversation has kind of shifted as well. So because I know you're very well connected to international networks, uh, today competitiveness seems to be taking center stage. Have you noticed that same evolution? Like, how do you perceive this?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess, basically, like when we started, with the EU AI Act, actually, like we had this hope, right? What I mentioned earlier, that the EU AI Act would create legal certainty for businesses, that would actually help and enable and strengthen, European AI developers. And also that basically, you would have this binding framework and, for trustworthy AI. And we discussed earlier, right? Like this is basically could be a European brand, like a competitive advantage for European AI developers. And actually, making trust a business model and trust being a component of business success for European AI developers. But like once we moved on, like we got so much feedback from the SME community, that the rules were too complex and that the reporting burdens were too high, especially for startups, who are limited in their resources, in their personnel capacity.
Oh, I think we have lost Nicole Manger. I hope she'll be able to go back. Yeah, she just got freeze. I really apologize that that's one of the great examples to say that technology doesn't always go the way we want, and that also the joy of going live. So yeah, there is no pre-production, post-production. She just froze. Um, mm. So for now, I don't see her going back. She just messaged me. She says she has an unexpected issue with electricity. She's asking for us to do a quick break. But I guess if we actually cut the stream now, it won't work back. So so okay. So yeah, let's just take a moment, wait for Nicole to come back. But what she's explaining is very important. I think it's exactly what we were kind of mentioning at the beginning of the call. There is a misalignment in between the pace of the latest innovation that we see on the market. New AI models appearing every single week. Now, AI agents are part of the conversation with higher level of autonomy, which definitely like challenge the governance frameworks, etc. It requests now to have in real time governance and ways of controlling what's going on. Oh yeah, Nicole is back. Woo-hoo. And so just to get back on the conversation, hi Nicole.
Hey, I'm so sorry. I just lost you. But at like the most important point, when I was discussing like, how we make it more innovation friendly and helping startups. So sorry for that.
That's
I hope
okay.
you could.
Don't worry at all. I was actually just saying that that's why the EU AI office is making an amazing work, because I think that without having the feedback from the businesses, the people in charge of operationalizing those AI laws. There's no way we can, try at least to make to make AI laws align with the reality of the markets, because they don't go and being deployed and developed at the same pace, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I mean, actually, it's like we didn't plan this to be, but just yesterday, I guess like there was the digital omnibus package, right? Like being released, and so basically, like this was the effort of the EU Commission to say like, hey, we are listening to what the business side is saying and what the SMEs are saying in terms of compliance guidelines and the reporting burden. What I mentioned earlier, right? And like, how can we make the EU AI, work for innovators, for AI developers? And so this digital omnibus package then was really released to provide assistance for AI developers in fulfilling the EU AI compliance standards, but also simplifying the rules, to make it more intuitive, make it more accessible. I think that's a super important indicator for the trend, Marianne, you were stating, right? Like that we see like we want to keep our regulatory credibility, but make it more innovation friendly so that we become, as a European market, more competitive. And I would argue, this whole debate around digital sovereignty, it functions like a political catalyst, right? Because it kind of creates this momentum for helping companies and AI developers to innovate faster and more successfully and to scale, to get access to growth capital, because we really see that digital technologies are becoming part of our national security and about our competitiveness economically and about our leverage politically. And so I would say like actually this whole geopolitical context is helping the AI developers in Europe and startups, because it's creating political momentum for innovation friendly rules that help us to level up in our competitiveness globally.
Thank you so much for that, and I couldn't agree more with you. And I think that's always the same question, finding the sweet spot in between innovation and regulation, so it goes hand in hand. Okay.
And I guess, like then we have to, and maybe you can, I guess it would be so valuable, to have like regular platforms and formats to discuss, like, what are the actual factors that startups across Europe need to help them scale, to help them be competitive and successful. So we could talk about, the venture capital system in Europe and growth capital, right? But also the whole question of talent development and how to attract talent to the European market or keep our European talent from like migrating to Silicon Valley, or the whole question of how to make our procurement more lean and efficient, more attractive for companies, for startups to actually work with the public sector. Because I see like GovTech, as a big market opportunity also for AI developers, or like how can we better leverage open source strategically, to help us innovate faster, be more, dynamic, be more transparent. It also plays into our European values, right, of transparency and openness. And finally, also, and I think that's an important point, energy partnerships. I mean, we have an issue here with the energy prices, and when it comes to AI, that obviously is a hurdle, right? Like, how can we diversify our energy partnerships to create more access to for AI developers to actually scale and not be obstructed by energy prices.
I think you're totally right. There's a couple of things I want to jump back on. First, what you've said really basically resonates with the reports from July released by the EU AI office, where they say basically that if tomorrow, let's say, I am a French AI startup and I've got strong engineers, at the end of the day, even though I have a promising product, limited resources, which often happens, that's basically the context of a startups, and we know how challenging it is. They identify 4 major structural bottlenecks. So just to summarize it for our audience: compute, as you said, growth capital, legal clarity around training data, and talents. And so naturally comes into this logical path of success, the place for private and public procurement, right? And so in this context, from your expertise, and yeah, maybe you can talk on behalf of Germany, I don't know, whatever you feel comfortable on, because when we met, you were actually working at the German Federal Office until January 2026, in charge of the AI global governance topic. Do you think in Germany, governments increasingly see AI companies as technology suppliers or as strategical national assets? I know in France it's one of the current topics, and that's why, for example, the French Ministry of Economy and Finance have pushed, La Mission French Tech has pushed to name French ambassadors across all French ministries to serve the program Je choisis la French Tech, and to basically create this systemic habits where if we need some new capabilities, then we first look into the French markets before purchasing abroad. So how is it in Germany? Do you think it's kind of aligned with the same vibe, or what do you observe?
Well, I guess, so you mentioned like so many interesting points, from the, I was just like thinking, what is the most important, like from the report also, just like a quick remark on the capital question, because I think like that's a critical issue that I see, also when talking to startups in the Berlin ecosystem, because usually they would get like seed funding, oftentimes also from the public sector, but like once they want to scale, especially when they want to grow across European borders, let's say like a Berlin AI startup wants to go to like have an office in Paris, it becomes very difficult to get this growth capital, scaling capital across European borders. So I guess like a huge bottleneck here is this capital access question, like how can we integrate this investment system more across Europe, consistent with our integrated European market, right? So that's one, but then also like how do we unlock more private capital? So in the US, you have this venture capital model, right? I think we kind of have to find creative ways to unlock more private capital also in the European Union. So like that's one bottleneck. And you mentioned procurement. I guess like procurement is a really big point, like an important factor, because all of that, what we discussed, compute power and talent and capital, like all of that is important. In the end, it's also about demand, right? Like we need to have strong market demand for European AI solutions. And I feel the public sector can actually be a big shaper of this demand, it creates demand. It can also be a shaper for industry choices. It can also be like strategically empowering European startups by investing in them and partnering with them. So I think like the program you mentioned that La French Tech is pioneering is so critical, and congratulations on this initiative. I think like that's like such an important initiative. I feel when we talk about public sector and startup collaboration, it is also so important that we create spaces where, in an easygoing way, startups can meet public sector professionals and experiment and co-create, prototype, test, in an, we would call it sandbox environment, before you would scale it across a public institution. In Berlin, we have an institution called GovTech Campus. Basically, that's this idea, you bring public sector professionals together with the startups, and they work on a practical policy question, creating a tech solution, but prototyping it in a protected environment before scaling it across institutions. And I feel like, we have to create more of those collaborative environments where we bring the policy side or the public sector side together with the startups. It's also important because I can just imagine, but as a startup founder, it's going to be so difficult to even understand the culture of public institutions, how they work, how the procurement works.
Exactly. The timeline, the processes, when they define the actual needs. Totally.
Yes. And I can say, like, as a public sector professional, for us, it is always so important to co-create with the tech side, because in the end, you want to have tech solutions that are operatively relevant, that are actionable, right? I can just tell you, like in preview, in this crisis early warning department, in the beginning, once we started, it was a more like, it was an innovation unit, very advanced, pioneering work, but it was not really tailored to the active needs of the diplomats. And so that caused a lot of, like, a lack of trust, a lack of acceptance. Yeah. So once we, went to co-create with the diplomats and the end users, acceptance raised, the trust was raised, and eventually adoption was really, advanced. And so I feel like that's why it's so important to give startups the chance to co-create and co-design with the public institutions. But obviously, you need to create those entry points.
You know what it makes me think of, and what is basically defended by so many international reports released over the past few years, KPMG, EY being some of the companies working on those topics, is the need for transparency. The need for, again, we're always going back to trust, but how do you build trust if you don't have transparent processes?
Exactly.
And I guess when they, as you say, when they get involved in a conversation from day one, and let's say, yes, in the ideal world, they co-create technologies together. Maybe in reality, it takes a lot of time and effort, and sometimes, both stakeholders don't have the capabilities to make it happen, but at least to be in the loop of what's going on will definitely help them trusting a specific solution or technology. And then whenever a public institution or a private company has a need, then because they have these businesses in mind that they've been following for months, then they might contact them. So that's exactly why we're trying to create with the program Je choisis la French Tech here in the Basque Country. Before reorganizing the annual event on July the 9th, where we offer 24 startups to pitch in front of public and private institutions. We basically organized a post-mortem with the global governance here at La French Tech Pays Basque. So we have 18 volunteers helping during the whole year, reuniting public-private structures here, specializing in innovation in the Basque Country. And we came to the conclusion that one day is just not enough. And there's no ways, obviously, that companies are going to sign commercial contracts with any of the stakeholders being present. So that's why we are going to be repeating in a more informal way, with a speech session, etc. Those meetups. One will be happening, it hasn't been announced yet, in September, another one in November. And that's kind of what we would like to help, basically having those stakeholders building long-term relationships. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. And I'm very happy basically to see the results of this in the upcoming month.
Sounds fantastic.
Thank you.
No, sounds fantastic.
Yeah. Thank you so much. We'll see how it works. One thing that we've already mentioned and tackled, but I just want to, maybe go back on this aspect and ensure that it kind of, that we get your insight on this. The report from the EU AI office suggests that Europe might not need to dominate every layer of AI, and it's really, really aligned with what you were saying. It definitely highlights opportunities in industrial AI, robotics, role models, having the Amy Labs being based in Paris, I guess, secure AI infrastructure, verification, trustworthy AI, and domain-specific applications. In your opinion, Nicole, where do you think Europe should really place its biggest bets? If you feel comfortable answering this question, because again, we're tackling very complex questions here, and we might not have the answer to everything we tackle.
I guess, like, from your list, if I had to pick just 3 of them, I guess, like, all of them are excellent suggestions, but if I had to just pick 3 of them, I guess it would be trustworthy AI. I guess, like, that's what I saw, when I negotiated the Global Digital Compact at the UN level in New York. The EU delegation had a lot of credibility on trustworthy AI, also with the Global South partners, other middle powers globally. We had a lot of just credibility to leverage and to build coalitions around this concept of trustworthy AI because of the EU AI Act. So that's a positive note to say about regulation, right? It gave us this credibility. It gave us this opportunity to form coalitions with other regions in the world, and especially the Global South. And so I guess, and as we discussed earlier, trust is increasingly becoming part of procurement, part of buying a product, right? And part of being your business success in the end, because it will help, clients to buy your AI and to trust it, to use it eventually. So that's the first. The second, I would say, because of this geopolitical context that we see us in currently, I would say it's definitely secure and sovereign AI infrastructure. And it plays into this argument I made earlier, at this moment where we are still a little bit, it's still nice to use the frontier AI models from the US because they are more performant currently. But how can we do it in such a way that our data is secure and that it's stored in the European Union? So how do we create this protective cloud environment, even when we use, AI coming from other countries, but at the same time, as I said, like investing in our own sovereign AI made in Europe and in our own open source ecosystem for mid to long term, even more sovereignty. And the third, really, as I said multiple times, like currently leveraging our advantage in industrial data, helping, like using those models and tailoring foundational models to specific industry needs, leveraging these industry data. I think like that's where I see the biggest market currently for European AI developers.
Yeah, that's really true. And thank you for mentioning this. And I think it definitely helps any AI developers listening to us right now to understand what direction they can surf on, which wave to surf on. And I think it's really important as well that they understand that one thing I was telling you about yesterday or this morning, that innovation per se doesn't mean much if we don't answer a problem, but also let's make sure that the innovation per se can also be defendable. What I mean by that is that here at French Tech Pays Basque, because we're an ecosystem where we constantly source new innovative entrepreneurs, we often see entrepreneurs that try to defend a business innovation, so like a product innovation, where basically they only use layers of artificial intelligence to an actual business models, and this is not enough to make it defendable. What I mean by that is that it often means that they just have like the smart use of an existing AI models that they plug onto the existing products, but just this is not enough to characterize the innovation per se. Maybe you want to say a couple of words about this?
No, I guess I actually agree entirely with what you said. I don't know if I have like much to add. I completely agree.
Okay. All right, so we basically reaching the almost the end of this conversation. Before closing, I would like to ask you one question. The report from the EU AI office, again, which I think is very brilliantly made because it's very autocritical as well, and they're trying to explore how public institutions could improve themselves and how this multi-stakeholder ecosystem at large could move into a better direction. So they mentioned several ambitious ideas. I'm going to name some. They're talking about a European DARPA, a CERN for AI gigafactories, stronger partnership with countries like Canada, Japan, Australia, and the United Kingdom. Which of these initiatives do you believe could genuinely transform Europe's trajectory, and why? And maybe can you take some time to explain to our audience what those abstract concepts are?
Right. I guess, like, again, all fantastic suggestions. I guess, like, from my point of view, I would pick the AI gigafactories because, like, we talk about trustworthy AI. It's like in the EU AI Act, we now talk about, like, how can we empower European AI developers to build, trustworthy AI, European AI, to build sovereign AI solutions. But like we can talk very long if we don't have, sovereign industrial scale compute power, right?
Right.
So otherwise, like if we don't have that trustworthy AI, it just remains a concept, a piece of regulation. So I feel like, that's like one of the most critical parts, like the physical infrastructure that will help us turn those ideas, those concepts of trustworthy AI into actual solutions that are scalable. And then I guess, combining that, the physical infrastructure with the, data partnerships with democratic, value-aligned partners globally, like Canada, like the UK, Japan, but also Australia, New Zealand, can be really fruitful, and it can help us to to level up and have like a strong European role in the global positioning between the US and China and other middle powers.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with what you said. So, okay, like a final word before we move into the question part. And again, like if you're watching us right now, feel free to drop any questions you might have on LinkedIn or on the YouTube channel, and we'll do our best to try to answer them. So looking ahead, let's imagine just for a minute, we're sitting here again in 2030. Europe, let's say, worst scenario case, Europe didn't become the biggest AI ecosystem in the world, but it became the most trusted, the most secure one, the preferred AI partner for governments and industry. At the end of the day, and in reflection to all of our conversation today, would you consider this a success?
Yeah, I would. I would definitely consider it a big success because, like in the end, what we want to achieve is that we balance innovation, but also balance it with safety, democratic values, and digital sovereignty, right?
Yes.
And then I would be very proud because in the end, it's not like, in my opinion, it's not about in the end about the most performative model, but really about the model that is trusted, and that is where clients and citizens more broadly, the public, is willing to use these models because trust is high, acceptance is high, because we know our data are protected, human rights are respected, democratic values are respected, right? So I guess I would personally see that as the biggest achievement. And if we could combine this by becoming the leader in industry and business AI, I guess that would be fantastic.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here with us today. So let me move into the Q&A part. I'm waiting for anyone in the chat to drop some. So actually, we do have some. So let me show the chat. We also have Augustin from Indata Veritas, that is listening to our chat, have prepared some of the questions. So let me start with the first one. Is Europe trying too hard to build its own foundation models instead of creating strong applications and vertical AI companies?
So the question is like if it's basically out of reach for European companies to build their own foundational models and compete directly with OpenAI on Anthropic or Google. Maybe
you can frame it this way, but yes, the answer is yes.
Okay. Well, it's a good question. I guess I personally am not sure, but I can describe like what discussions I'm observing in European capitals, and I guess like it's definitely more this direction that basically we. Like, I don't know if it's even eventually too hard. Like, even when we create like all the, factors and all the environment to empower a European startup or company to compete directly with those frontier AI companies in the US, if that's like out of reach. But the question is like, is it necessary, right? Because there are other fields or, application sectors where Europe can lead directly. As I said, like the industrial AI, but also like leveraging more like smaller, more efficient models for specific domain applications. And even when you listen to people like Sam Altman or Dario Amodei, like they are saying, the future of the AI value chain or the market is not gonna rely only on the foundational models or creating the most powerful foundational model, but really on integrating this at scale in businesses and in industry. So the question then is like, should Europe invest so much money and so much capacity in, competing directly with like a US frontier model provider, or should we be a little bit more strategic and, invest our limited, capacities and money in areas where we can actually be the front runner.
Thank you so much, Nicole. Thank you so much for your answer. There is Clément Madinier that at the beginning of the call actually put some, commented on the live. I don't think you can see everything, so I'm going to basically read what he said, and let me know if you feel comfortable answering this. He said that the conversation was very interesting. He's a SaaS builder here. One of the practical lessons he's learned is that he asked one of his vendors from an Article 28 DPA and got a written refusal, perfect diligence, but it turned an unknown risk into a documented breach I now have to migrate away from. That's what he's saying. And I never rest US transfers on the DPF alone. DPF plus SCCs as a dual basis with a written TIA, because it's a lot of contractions word, so I'm not sure what he's referring to. Because PCLOB has lacked quorum since January 2025. So the question is there a government path for one-person vendors, or does compliance simply mean consolidating onto a few large providers? Maybe you can focus on that last part of the question.
No, I guess that's a very interesting concrete example. So thank you for sharing this. I would love to look into this and think about the concrete governance that is tailored to this use case example, and maybe we can connect after the conversation at a more technical level, how regulation applies to this specific case. But thanks a lot for sharing. This is very interesting.
I think it's very interesting. I guess, it really posing some major, but I guess again, what it means is that in order to ensure that we are compliant, always dig into the way any models is functioning, ask for, reporting, documents, basic documentation to understand how the AI model was trained, how it functions, etc. All right, then another one, question from Indata Veritas. How can a European startup compete when US companies have better access to capital, compute, and distribution? So let me put it in the chat so then I can put it on screen. So just before I let you answer, Nicole, I think in my opinion, and then you can jump back on what I'm saying because you are the expert here, I think this is kind of related to all of the trustworthy parts we've been talking about. Yes, US might have a better framework, better processes to lead the money into innovation on the US market. They're definitely better at doing this than we are. However, I think that on the long run, our governance framework, our legal framework will definitely help us to build more trustworthy AI products. So to be more competitive in the long run. What do you think?
No, I agree. But at the same time, I also somehow, take this as really helpful feedback, for policymakers, because it shows the question marks basically European innovators and entrepreneurs in this field have about their competitive capacity, right? And it also shows me that we really have to work a little bit harder in creating more, equitable framework conditions in the European market to help AI developers in Europe to innovate, but also to scale and be really successful in the long run. And like you mentioned, capital access, that's so critical. Again, that's what I meant. We have to think a little bit more out of the box. How can we innovate our investment system here across Europe so that scaling across European borders doesn't become so much of a problem, or that we also unlock more private capital for AI developers to scale. So I think that's critical. We have to have this debate at the at the political level. Open source, I think, is one answer. Really taking it seriously and investing in our open source ecosystems and infrastructure, because that's really the innovation foundation, the basis, right? To innovate faster, to get access faster, to be more transparent. I think it's the answer, to the proprietary models in the US, because at lower cost you can innovate faster and be successful. So I feel like that's part of the like a puzzle piece of the answer as well. And then again, like the tremendous role of governments in shaping the European AI market through procurement, but also making AI developers in Europe strong, because once we decide to give a contract to a European AI developer, it will give them revenue, but it will also give them credibility, what they need, it will connect them to global partners. So that will actually be a concrete pathway for a company to become visible to a global market, to a European market, and then to scale and attract more capital. So I think it's like, we could have this discussion, I guess, for a whole day. It's an excellent question, but I really take it as feedback also for the policymakers.
Okay. So the very last question I want you to answer to. Also, I could also answer that one too, but yeah, does the AI Act create trust, or does it mainly increase the cost of building a startup in Europe?
Do you want to jump in first? Because like you have, I guess, like the direct feedback from the startup community in Nouvelle-Aquitaine region.
Yeah, I mean, even though I'm quite new in my role, and like I don't want to build from assumptions that are not verified. So what I'm gonna say here is more like built on my past experience, on my research work through AI owners and working on how to build sustainable performance and avoid AI risks. I guess what I'm seeing from everything we say is that none of those concepts, whether we talk about AI laws, governance, trust, can be approached into silos. It's all related to each other. And so if we want basically create European champions on top of understanding where they should invest into strategic capabilities, we were talking about AI industries, AI robotics, infrastructure for data, etc. I think we need to merge all of those synergies into the same direction. So we need to pair as well procurements with investment going towards businesses that actually help us building a better world and help us developing products and a world that is aligned with the values of Europe, as you said before. I think in Europe we defend a lot of great values such as inclusion, trust, etc., even though we know that the political landscape can sometimes challenge those, and I don't want to get into any political discussions, because this is definitely not my role and my position. So that would be my input. And then what I could say is that I think that, again, as you said, operationalizing any AI rules is very difficult. So it takes time to implement, and it will also request us to stay agile, meaning that, it's like when you build a strategy nowadays, there's no way you can build a strategy and it's set in stone for years. You constantly have to ask yourself, is this still the right direction? Is this still aligned with the market? Now we see AI agents. That's what I was talking about while you were away. We see AI agents integrated in so many aspects of the business world. So it means that we have AI models gaining into autonomy. What does it mean for AI governance? How do we, in real time, basically flag any potential issue? And I think one of the great example is the leak of the cloud code source, that happened in April, that really poses the question of, are we able basically to control what we are deploying and developing right now? So I think that if we don't have guardrails such as the European AI Act to put some type of frameworks, then I think, I'd be very worried. So again, I'm not really answering the question. So maybe you can take it from there.
Actually, I was building on your answer. I guess it's also deviating a little bit more from the original question, but it's an important point you made about AI agents. And it brings me to a concept that I'm currently really intrigued by and looking at, and that is basically the human infrastructure of AI. Because so you have regulation, and I think the EU AI Act did its part. Like it's an excellent foundation. Now we have to turn it into a product reality and to creating competitive products. But the question you raise with the AI agents is, basically like, how do we evolve human capacity and human leadership capacity, but also oversight capacity when we get to this next generation of AI, right? For example, I guess at a conference like some months ago, there was an excellent professor. She was working on the future of work, and she said that our labor is transforming from us being the executors of work to us being the overseers of AI agents and whole, colonies of AI agents. And we will be the overseers and the orchestrators. But now imagine you have like this whole colony of AI agents who act super fast, powerful, and you have one human overseer. Like, imagine the mental capacity and exhaustion this is creating. So the question is, like, how do we as humans develop the capabilities to even execute our overseeing, our oversight function efficiently and effectively, right? And that's why I think like regulation, it's one basis, but it will eventually much, much, much more depend on our individual choices as tech leaders, as entrepreneurs, as individual citizens who create demand and thereby shape industry choices. And also, the future generations and the skills they will adopt and learn if we turn those values into a reality. But it's also power, right? Because we realize that we have agency as individuals. We don't have to be reliant on just the law or regulation. We can turn trustworthy AI into reality by being a good leader, by being, a smart, critically thinking citizen or client. And strategic tech leader.
Yeah. Nicole, thank you so much for all of the insights that you have shared with us today. It's been incredible to have you with us. And actually, let me just show you what's in Data Veritas frame based on all of our conversation, which I think, is pretty aligned with everything you've said. In the end, Europe's AI future will depend less on declarations of sovereignty than on its ability to turn cooperation, investment, and industrial ambition into companies that can compete globally.
Yes, I agree with this. I agree. Maybe just one last word is, what makes me hopeful and optimistic is actually the drive, and the excitement that I see in the startup and the entrepreneurial communities across Europe. And I think that's why I like working with La French Tech, but also other innovation hubs like Station F you have in Paris, right? I think there's so much potential, in connecting these across regions, across the European countries, because, entrepreneurs can share their hopes and their frustrations, but also their wishes, and really encourage each other. And we have to also create good platforms to connect the entrepreneurs to the policymakers, so that we, on the policymaking side, get the feedback, the direct feedback of those who are innovating, because we need this input to make better policies and create those framework environments for companies to succeed, right? So I think you're doing a great job. I love your initiatives and programs, and it has been such a great honor to be joining you today, and I would love to stay in touch with the communities.
Yes, definitely, let's stay in touch. And again, just to make it crystal clear, I am just basically a little piece of the channel of those 125 communities we are part of. And it's also an honor for me to work for la French Tech Pays Basque, because I, as you know, and you know me, I find myself defending a lot of values that are very close to my heart. So yeah, I'm very happy that, again, you took the time to be with us today. One thing I observed last year when working on different ecosystem is that those types of conversations often happens at the European Commission, United Nations ecosystems, and more. But we really struggle to build bridges basically in between product innovation ecosystem. So
absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's very key that you were with us today. It's a very long conversation, 1 hour 20, but it was so insightful. Yes, I'm so happy. So this is going to be the end of our conversation today. And Nicole, I really thank you again. For the ones that are just listening to us for the first time, don't hesitate to follow La French Tech Pays Basque as we continue bringing together entrepreneurs, researchers, policymakers, and industry leaders in the upcoming months who are shaping Europe's technological future. So yeah, see you. Thank
Perfect.
you, Nicole.
Thank you so much, Marianne.
Bye.
Bye.
And yes, before I officially close the conversation, I'd like to say a few words about La French Tech, the national international network, and also La French Tech Pays Basque. We represent the French innovation ecosystem across every region in France, and in many countries across the globe. Here in Nouvelle-Aquitaine, as a reminder, we are very proud to work alongside our regional communities. So our capital, French Tech Bordeaux, and all of the local communities in the area, French Tech Limousin, French Tech Périgord, French Tech Pau Béarn, and French Tech Poitou-Charentes, that we thank today because they've been also broadcasting and communicating on this webinar. And we hope that this conversation helps strengthen the competitiveness of our territory and contribute to Europe's technological sovereignty. And yeah, before I close the conversation, the French Tech Network operates under the French Ministry for the Economy, Finance, and Industrial and Digital Sovereignty through the Mission French Tech, a national team of around 30 people led by Julie Huguet. Our mission is simple: to help innovative entrepreneurs grow faster. And we do this by creating different opportunities throughout the year. First, through Je Choisis la French Tech that we already talked about, a national initiative helping startups accelerate their access to both public and private procurement, through Invest in Pays Basque that here in Biarritz will happen on October the 6th. So you can, October the 6th. So you can already apply through our website to participate to the events as an investor or as a startupper. And finally, through initiatives like Nouvelle-Aquitaine Tech Bridge and other events where we bring world-class experts to our ecosystem to help founders better understand the technological, geopolitical, and industrial transformations shaping tomorrow's economy. So today's conversation is only the beginning. On September the 3rd, we'll welcome Christina Lenghi, founder of the International Charter for Inclusive AI, Arborus, that was launched at the United Nations headquarters in New York in 2020, recognized during the AI Action Summit 2025 and 2026 by the President Macron as one of the France's flagship international deliverables. We'll discuss inclusive AI, responsible leadership, and revisit the signing of the charter by La French Tech Pays Basque during Vivatech. And then in October, we'll welcome Jérôme Bellion, fellow researcher at the Institute for Global Negotiation and co-chair at the AI for Goods Global Summit, fresh from the latest discussions in Geneva to explore where the world stands on global AI governance. So if you're an innovative entrepreneur based in the Basque Country, we'd love to hear from you. Feel free to reach out and book a call with our team on the website. If you're based in another region, we encourage you to connect with your local French tech community or capital. So thank you very much. And don't forget to visit our events page to discover upcoming meetups and subscribe to our newsletter. Thank you.